You're listening to the Cyberwire Network, powered by N2K.
They seem to really understand how the retailers have been protecting themselves and saying, okay, well, if you built a fence around this or you've put a lock key on this piece, well, I'll just go around to the other side door.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the CyberWire's Hacking Humans podcast, where each week we look behind the social engineering scams, phishing schemes, and criminal exploits that are making headlines and taking a heavy toll on organizations around the world. I'm Dave Bittner, and joining me is Joe Kerrigan from Harbor Labs and the Johns Hopkins University Information Security Institute. Hello, Joe.
Hi, Dave.
Got some good stories to share this week. And later in the show, a gentleman named Bennett. He is Chief Customer Officer at Signified. We're talking about their recent report about a fraud ring. But first, a word from our sponsor, KnowBe4. Where would InfoSec professionals be without users making security mistakes? Working less than 60 hours per week, perhaps. Actually having a weekend every so often. We get it. User behavior can be a challenge. But users can also be an InfoSec professional's greatest asset once properly equipped. What do we mean by that? Well, stay with us, and in a few minutes, we'll hear from our sponsors at KnowBe4 on that very question. All right, Joe, before we dig into our stories this week, we've got a little bit of follow-up here. What do we got?
We do. We have John, who writes in with a little story. He says, hi, Dave, Joe, and Jen, who is our executive producer.
Yep.
For Ivan.
Yep.
John wants to provide a little bit of background. He has a bachelor's degree in computer networking and information systems management, a master's degree in information security. He listens to our podcast every week and has for years. He works in identity management and access management for a large multinational bank.
Well,
he
John.
says he knows phishing, hacking, and social engineering very well.
Yes, indeed.
During a team meeting last week, I'm just going to start reading.
Yeah, okay.
During a team meeting, my colleague told me that as part of a new rollout of multi-factor authentication, we would be receiving an email in the coming weeks to confirm our MFA setup to ensure that there's no interruption when the rollout goes live. Common, right?
Yeah.
When you start building these systems to be more secure, you're going to try to roll that out.
Yeah.
Today, I received an email saying, click here to confirm your MFA. Honestly, I was holding my daughter when the mail came in, and I was reading it. While I was reading it, she became fussy. I was amazed at how quickly the mail came after being told about it. So I thought I'd confirm my MFA and then put the baby down for a nap. I clicked the link and fortunately got saved by Firefox saying the link looks suspicious. Wow. I went and looked at the email again and realized that it was from a non-company address and had the time crunch statement of, you'll be locked out if you don't confirm by next week. I fortunately never put in my credentials, so I passed the test, more or less. But I got pretext by my colleague and went to ask him about it and if he knew about the test. Turns out that it was just a lucky timing of our CERT team conducting a test at the same time as the MFA rollout was planned. Thought I'd share that. Even when you're in a rush and the mail looks like something you're expecting, you should still take a second to ensure the sender address and the URL is real before you click.
Yeah.
Okay. So fortunately, John got saved by the Firefox link or Firefox notification that the link was suspicious.
Right.
This was also from his CERT team, which is I don't know. This sounds like it might be business miscommunication. Right. I don't know that I'd run this test while doing that. Or maybe I would. I don't know, because it's harmless, right? It is a real attack scenario. This is what attackers look for, exactly what attackers look for.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess in this case it seems it was coincidental. I don't know how sporting it would be to run a multi-factor phishing test while you were rolling out multi-factor.
Yeah,
right?
well,
I mean,
and everybody knows about it.
Yeah, I don't, I guess you're not setting yourself up for good feelings of trust and honesty among your team if that's your strategy. It's like the ones where the the company sends out a phishing test at the end of the year that says, good news, everybody's getting a bonus.
Right.
Right? I mean...
And there's no bonuses.
Yeah.
That's the worst part.
Right.
Just kidding.
Yeah. But you let me slap you on the wrist for failing that test.
Yeah, that particular test is one I would definitely leave to the bad guys. But this one I think is good, because I think I'm going to disagree with you on this one, that this is sporting. And the reason being that he works at a large multinational bank. Chances are information about this rollout has leaked to the bad guys. So I think it's good to prep the team. I don't think you take metrics on this, right?
Yeah.
I don't think you take metrics or ding people on it. But I think that you use this as a teaching moment and you say, this is what the bad guys are going to do. We think they may know that we're rolling out the multi-factor authentication.
Mm-hmm. The other thing that I think is noteworthy here is that part of the reason that he went down the wrong path is that he was distracted by taking care of his young child.
That is one of the things that Doctors Lee and DeBurra at the Information Security Institute did some research on in the past. And they found that, yes, being distracted does, in fact, make you more susceptible to a phishing attack.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, don't have young children.
I'm going to disagree with that.
They grow up so fast, Joe.
Yes, but then they give you grandchildren, and it's wonderful.
I was just saying to a friend of mine recently who has very young children, and they were, sort of as new parents do. They were asking, when does it end? When does it end? And I said the great thing is that not only there comes a time when you can say to them, "Go feed yourself." But there also comes a time when you can say, go get me some food. And they will bring you back some food. And this is a wonderful, wonderful thing. A good reason to have children. All right. Well, our thanks to John for sending that in to us. We do appreciate it. And, of course, we would love to hear from you. Our email address is hackinghumans@thecyberwire.com. All right, Joe, let's jump into our stories this week. Why don't you start things off for us here?
Dave, again, I have two stories because they're both very short, which is a problem. When I go looking for these stories, I can't find a good long story that's involved.
Okay, that's all right.
I don't know why. But the first story comes from CNN, and I don't know why it's under politics. It should be under government, but it's by Sean Lingaz. I hope I'm saying that right.
Mm-hmm.
Scammers pose as tech support to hack employees of 2 agencies last year.
Government agencies.
Government agencies.
Okay.
And the story doesn't say which agencies they are, but they are federal employees of government agencies, of civilian government agencies. And CISA, that's the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, the NSA, and the Threat Sharing Center for State and Local Governments, known as MS-ISAC. Mm-hmm. And ISAC is just a way to share information in a certain industry. And the MS-ISAC is the multi-state ISAC. Mm-hmm. The goal of the scam appears to have been to hit both private sector and government agencies to trick victims into sending the scammers money. It was unclear if that happened in the case of the federal employees. Interesting that it's unclear. I think you should be able to find that information out.
Huh.
I would like to know if these federal employees, first off, what they were going after.
Yeah.
Because it sounds to me like this may have been... I'd like to know who was targeted, what agency was targeted. Mm-hmm. The agency said they were concerned such hackers could sell stolen information to government-backed spies, which is true, mm-hmm. right? It's an espionage attempt. But this is a civilian effort. But that doesn't mean that foreign intelligence services are not interested in civilian activities of our government. Mm. The espionage game is not just about the military stuff.
Right.
And the State Department is a huge target, and that's pretty much a civilian agency, mm-hmm. right? Or a civilian department. It's not an agency. It's a department. But they were coming in by saying, hey, I'm with tech support. Give me a call. And these guys called them.
Right.
So, and then they were told to go to a malicious site and download some software. So bad news all around.
Yeah, absolutely. What's the other one?
The other one is more of a personal story. And it comes from People Magazine, from Anna Kaplan.
Okay.
And the headline of the story is, 36-year-old woman accused of romance scam to swindle $2.8 million from elderly Holocaust survivor.
Wow.
What? I have a sentence in my head right now. I'm not going to say it.
Okay, good.
But it was on the nature of the character of this person.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This person's name is Peaches Sturgo. She is from Florida. And how did she find this guy? Well, she went on a dating app and connected with him on the dating app. And then she said, hey, by the way, I've got a large sum of money that I've won from a lawsuit from a car accident. But my attorneys won't release the funds to me because I owe them money. Right? And she talks this guy into giving her $27,000.
Wow.
On the first go, or $25,000 on the first round. This was back in May of 2017. Got my numbers mixed up there, Dave.
Okay.
It continues. She continues on to essentially get almost monthly checks, often in increments of $50,000 from this poor guy.
Wow.
She has essentially drained this guy's bank account, and he is now having to move out of his apartment in New York City.
Oh.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
Terrible what they've done. I hope they can recover some of this because naturally when you're a human being that does this kind of thing, you're going to go out and spend frivolously. And this woman is no exception. She had a laugh. The indictment says she lived a life of luxury with the millions she received from the fraud. She bought a home in a gated community, a condominium, a boat, numerous cars, including a Corvette and a Suburban rather. During the course of the fraud, she took expensive trips, staying at the Ritz-Carlton, and spent thousands of dollars on expensive meals, gold coins, and bars, which are essentially fungible materials, right? Those still have value. Jewelry, Rolex watches, and designer clothing. The designer clothing and the cars and all the food, that money is essentially gone. But they may be able to get some money by recovering the gold bars and the coins and maybe the Rolex and the houses.
Yeah.
I think they can certainly liquidate those and give the guy back some of his money.
It's interesting that this article says that it was discovered when the man who was being scammed told his son about the arrangement.
Yep. That was as he was running out of money, he told him. So it's, this reminds me of what you do with your dad and how you have the ability to monitor his bank account.
Right.
On the regs. So if this guy's son had seen the first $25,000 payment, he may have gone, hey, what's going on here, Dad? And stopped the guy from losing, $2.8 million.
Yeah.
If you have $2.8 million, $25,000 is not that big of a loss for you. But like I say frequently, these scammers are going to just keep hitting you up for money until one of two things happens. You realize it's a scam and you stop sending them money, or you run out of money to send them.
Right. I wonder if they ever met, if this was all done remotely. The story says that she was in Florida. Or she's from Florida. He's in New York.
Right.
It doesn't really say, but yeah, it's heartbreaking, isn't it?
It is. It's terrible.
Yeah. To your point about being able to monitor your loved one's bank accounts, one of the nice things is, for example, I have my father's bank account set up so that if a transaction above a certain size occurs,
right,
I get a notice. So what that means is I'm not getting the day-to-day just going about his life sorts of things, so I'm not getting alert fatigue, right? From all the day-to-day banking stuff. I suppose there's a little bit of risk there where if, for example, someone were to come after my father in small increments, then I wouldn't know about it. But certainly, if somebody, $25,000 or something like that, I would get that right away and hopefully be able to head it off at the pass. You just never know.
Yep.
All right. Well, we will have links to both of these stories in the show notes. My article this week comes from Wired, written by Matt Burgess, and it's titled, "A Sneaky Ad Scam Tore Through 11 Million Phones, Some 1,700 Spoofed Apps, 120 Targeted Publishers, 12 billion false ad requests per day." This is a campaign called VastFlux, one of the biggest ad frauds ever discovered. Are you familiar with the attack technique called FastFlux? Have you heard of that?
I have not heard of this.
Okay.
This is a new one to me.
I recall us reporting on it a while back on CyberWire, and FastFlux was a way, I believe it was a way of obfuscating IP addresses. So it would appear as though your requests, your interactions were coming from a broad array of IP addresses rather than a single one. And that cuts down on the ability for your actions to be detected.
I see.
So the researchers are calling this vast flux, and it's a play on the name fast flux, which is the part of the type of attack that they're using here.
Right.
So let me back up here and just sort of describe what's going on. As we know, we live in this online app economy and this online advertising economy. So if you or I or anybody goes onto a website or a Google search or pretty much anything we do that has ads these days online, and these days that's most things.
Right.
When you log on to a site, quite often there's a bidding process that takes place among the ad companies to put their ad in front of you. And part of that is based on the information they have about you, where you're located, the demographic information they have about you, all that kind of stuff. So what these bad actors were doing was they were actually purchasing ad space with legitimate ad networks, but in their ads, they were inserting bad code. I believe it was Java code. I can't remember if it was Java or JavaScript. Let me see if I can get it here.
Probably JavaScript.
Yes. They were inserting malicious JavaScript code. And what it would do is display multiple ads that were stacked up on top of each other.
I see.
So you would only see, as the user, you would only see the topmost ad.
Right.
But this could stack up to 25 ads underneath.
I see.
And they would get credit and
They'd
get paid
for showing you 25 ads.
For showing all of those ads.
After only showing one.
Correct. So they'd pay for one placement, but collect on the placement of 25 ads.
I see.
This is bad for the user because it'll drain your phone battery faster as it processes all of these ads. These ads tend to be processor intensive.
Okay. I'm not sure I care that much about that, but and in fact,
as a user, you probably wouldn't.
Right.
It doesn't seem like they're going after the user as their victim here.
Right. This is a front end ad broker, right, or ad seller, and what they're doing is they're saying to all these different back end engines like Google and Amazon and Trade Desk, all these different back end people, they're going, we'll show you an ad, or we'll show an ad, one of your ads.
Right.
And they're not showing the ad to the user, but they're collecting the money from these companies.
Right. Right.
All right.
So they were doing 12 billion ad requests per day.
Right. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
It's also interesting that they were primarily hitting iOS devices, which I think we tend to think that most of this stuff happens on the Android side just because it's a little less of a walled garden.
I wonder why they were hitting iOS devices, because it's just HTML and JavaScript. I mean, it's simple enough to do.
Yeah.
But
don't know.
I wonder if they're taking that market because those people demand, if you're on an iOS device, do you command a higher price as an advertisee, as someone to get shown an ad to?
You do, yes.
Yeah.
I believe in general you do.
That's probably why they targeted iPhone users.
Yeah, that makes
iOS
sense.
Users.
This article says that they believe they hit about 11 million devices. And then again, the device owners really wouldn't have known this was going on. It wasn't infecting their device. It was just sort of taking advantage of their device to run this scam. So these researchers reached out to the ad companies and let them be aware of it. They've done their best to shut it down, and evidently, for now, this Vast Flux campaign has been stopped.
It'll be back. And the reason I say it'll be back is because this is very difficult to detect.
Yeah.
Because if you think about this, they're selling their ads, or they're selling ad space to a whole bunch of different buyers.
Mm-hmm.
And if I sell that, if I say there might be 25 buyers they're selling to, and they're saying to everybody, congratulations, you won the auction. Now give me my money.
Right.
And that's how this works. The user never sees it. The only way to check it is to have a researcher analyze the HTML of every web page on the internet and find out if anybody is doing this.
Well, I place some of the responsibility on the ad networks in that they should be doing a better job of taking a look at this JavaScript code that's coming through that's passing through their systems. Don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know which advertiser. I mean, these guys are front end, right?
No, I think no. They're buying space through ad brokers to place these ads that contain the JavaScript.
So they're middleware.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I see. So you're saying that the front end guys should be watching this a little bit closer.
Correct.
Yeah, right. That is who bears the responsibility for this.
Yeah. At least for catching it.
Right.
There's to me there's a shortcoming there.
The defensive responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The offensive responsibility always lies with the bad guy.
Right.
And I want to make that clear. I'm not blaming the victim here.
Yeah. I wonder too if there's anything on the OS side, for iOS and Android, if there's anything that they could be doing to look out for this sort of behavior. I suppose these ads are kind of self-contained and, and anything you do to stop this could also break it, but...
Right. I mean, it's the thing is that it's really not it's a web developer or a web browser developer that you're talking about here. That's who you're, and in the case of iOS, that it's only Apple.
Right.
Right? With WebKit, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
And in the case of Android, it could be anybody.
Mm-hmm.
So, I have 3 browsers on my phone. I have the DuckDuckGo browser, I have Mozilla, and I have the default Chrome browser, which I almost never use.
Mm-hmm.
So, who's going? I think you will see something like this in the Chrome browser because that's owned by Google, and they are one of the people that are probably victimized by this.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think you might see things coming out of Chrome in this.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will have a link to that story in the show notes. Again, we would love to hear from you. Our email address is hackinghumans@thecyberwire.com. All right, Joe, it is time to move on to our catch of the day.
Dave, our catch of the day comes from friends of the show, Chad and Jen.
Oh, super listener Chad.
That's right. Super listener Chad.
Yeah.
I got a great story. Can I tell the story?
Sure.
Okay, so I was actually playing Fortnite with Chad and Jen, and all of a sudden Jen goes, "Joe, is Lisa yelling for you?" And I'm like, "I don't know, is she?" But my wife was downstairs, and she could hear Jen could hear Lisa, but my headphones actually block out everything. Plus, they fill my ears with the events going on in the game.
So the people you were playing with could hear your wife calling you, but you could not.
But I could not.
Brilliant.
It is.
All right.
Good.
You've gamed that very well, Joe.
I did.
Yeah.
But Chad writes in, "Hi, Dave and Joe. As you know, I'm a regular listener, and I try to pass the things I learn on to my wife when I can. She sometimes is trapped in the car with me and has to listen." There you go, Chad. Thank you. Do that with as many people as you can.
Sure.
Either way, she has gotten pretty good at spotting scams. She asked if I could pass this email on to you. Jen has several music services, so this almost caught her. Thanks for all the good info. Love the show. Talk to you later, Chad. So this is an email that Jen received. It's called Renewal Details. Mm-hmm. So Dave, why don't you go ahead and read this email?
It says, Renewal Details. It's all caps, so they're yelling. And 2 exclamation points,
That's
not
right.
one.
So very exciting.
Yes. Thank you for your payment of $141.34. Music Lover, Jen's email address. Thank you for subscribing iTunes iMusic application. The annual renewal fee of your plan upon expiration of your contract will be invoiced based on the information on your registered details with us. We are happy for you. For the day of consumption, a full 1-year, 12-month subscription.
For the day of consumption?
Yeah, total amount paid, $141.34. You will not be charged for your complimentary trial. Once it ends, your subscription will renew at $141.34 unless you cancel by Tuesday, January 17th, 2023. Enjoy listening to iMusic with your family and friends and groove on all kinds of music of your choice. In case you are dissatisfied or do not want to continue with this subscription or cancellation, please reach us to our help desk team at 1-800 within a 24-hour period to stop it. If you do not subscribe to the iMusic in-app services, then simply reach out to our help desk team to cancel. Thanks, the App Store team.
Now, the phone number is separated by a bunch of dots, like periods,
Right.
to get through the spam filter, which apparently it did very effectively. Dave, is iTunes iMusic a product? Is that actually a thing?
iTunes iMusic. iMusic is there's Apple Music.
Right.
There's no iMusic.
Okay. I didn't think so.
But I could see how people could be confused with or tricked by this because Apple does tend to put I in front of everything.
They do indeed.
Yeah.
iPod, iPad, iTunes. So this is interesting, and this kind of dovetails in with our message from John earlier.
Yeah.
That this comes into Jen as something that would be, she would be expecting, right? Because she listens to multiple music services. Now, I will confess that at one point in time, I actually had 2 music services. I had Amazon Music and Spotify. But
How decadent.
Huh?
How decadent.
How decadent of me, right? I canceled the Amazon Music because I noticed I'm never using this, and that's just $8 to help Jeff Bezos play rocket ship. So,
okay.
I'm going to cancel it and just stick with Spotify, which I have the family account on so that my wife and kids can all listen to it.
Right.
So this email comes to her, and it fits with what she would expect. But fortunately, she spotted it as a scam, probably because of the terrible grammar in this one. This is an attempt to get you to call the number and then give them access to your PC.
Yeah.
So
or your credit card or
your
who knows
credit card,
what.
yeah.
Right. Because they, even if you they could say, oh gosh, well, in order to process your refund, we need your credit card number.
Right.
Right. And off you go.
Yep. I want to get a burner phone just to call these guys, just call these numbers and see what happens. But I don't want to use my regular phone because I don't want them calling me back on that number.
Yeah. Couldn't you get a Google Voice account?
That
would work. Yeah. All right. Well, our thanks to Chad and Jen for sending this in to us. We do appreciate it. Once again, you can email us. It's hackinghumans@thecyberwire.com. We were talking about making users into an asset for security professionals. Simply put, users want to do the right thing. They're often just lacking the knowledge to do so. That's one of the reasons KnowBe4 has released Security Coach, a real-time security coaching tool that takes alerts from your existing security stack and sends immediate coaching to users who've taken risky actions. For example, imagine a user has visited a high-risk website or tried to open a document containing malware. Existing security tools will likely block that action, but the user might not understand why. Security Coach analyzes these alerts and provides users with relevant security tips via email or Slack, coaching them on why the action they just took was risky. Help users learn from their mistakes and strengthen your organization's security culture with Security Coach. Learn more about Security Coach at knowbe4.com/securitycoach. That's knowbe4.com/securitycoach. Joe, I recently had the pleasure of speaking with a gentleman who goes by the name of Bennett, just a single name like Madonna or Cher.
Or Foster from Zero Fox.
Right. But he is the chief customer officer at a company called Signified, and they recently published a report on a fraud ring. So here's my conversation with Bennett.
The scale of this particular attack is, close to $1 billion. It's rounding to $1 billion. We originally estimated at about 660 million in actual successful attempts across the e-commerce industry in the USA in Q3, Q4 of calendar 22. So during the holiday period and ramping up to it. So that size is pretty eye-popping. And so that's a big reason that we wanted to share our learnings of this to help the broader, InfoSec community understand what this meant and how to maybe address it.
Well, can you describe to us what's going on here? What exactly is this fraud?
Yeah, it's really interesting because it's not super novel in the worldwide scope of fraudulent attempts in payments or e-commerce or consumer facing financial instruments, but it is relatively unique targeting the United States of America and specifically consumer deliveries related there up into the holiday season. So Signified operates worldwide, and we've seen these kind of attacks in a couple other places in Latin America, especially. We've seen these kind of brute force attacks. And then in the United States, we've seen them before at much larger order values for things like gold or cryptocurrency, things that are closer to fiat currency. And so a couple things that really made us drawn to this were that it was targeting kind of our e-commerce merchants, the kind of our bread and butter where we started, and using very focused, deliberate, and broad-based attacks that are at the, call it, very boring $200 average order value. Think AirPods, right? From that perspective, something that people want to buy for the holidays, you want to receive as a gift. You as a consumer are shopping for a deal online. You're like, man, inflation's really high. I want to try to get a good deal. I find a site that has good reviews. They have a 25% off on the latest model. Apple's not offering any discounts directly on that model. How can this be? But the reviews are so good. All right, I as a consumer am going to buy that. The fraudsters take that order. They go use stolen financial information. They buy that from a legitimate retailer with that stolen financial information from a irrelevant third-party member who's going to file the chargeback eventually. And then the original consumer who wants that 25% off receives actual AirPods, and the fraudsters pocket the profit from that. So it's actually very sophisticated in a triangulation perspective, and there's some nuances, and it gets even more complex. But that's ultimately what we were able to deduce was happening here.
And who ultimately loses out here? Is it the merchants that the fraudsters are buying the product from that eventually get that charge back?
That's exactly correct. So in a card not present environment, the onus for protecting against fraudulent financial instruments usually falls on the retailer, depending on the payment instrument type. And that's definitely the case with credit card payments.
Now, your report points out the success of this group, and as you said, they're inching up near $1 billion of volume here. That's a lot. What do you suppose is the reason for their success here?
Yeah. So to put this into context, we estimate that the attempts are over 3.5 billion at this point. So if you're thinking about a success rate, call it 20% success rate, right? In terms of getting through across all of e-commerce. Our clients, thankfully, we were able to blunt some of that. But the reason that they've been successful is they're targeting these items that retailers want to sell. And they're targeting items, ranges, and very clearly, obviously, gifting type activities ahead of the holidays on order values that normally do not receive scrutiny. So if you think about a retailer that maybe has an average order value of $500, right? For example, so maybe a consumer electronics provider, someone who is buying a cart of $100, $150, $200. That's below your median. It's below your average. It's below your hottest items. If you have one of the more antiquated systems in place where you have human beings taking a look at orders, those human experts are going to be focusing on your big ticket items because that's historically where fraud has been more prevalent in the United States. So I think that's a big reason of the success is that the fraudsters reverse engineered the kind of basic elements of defense that have been deployed in e-commerce. And then there's a whole level of sophistication once they found any measure of kind of pushback or the ability to deflect the attacks. But I think at its root, they seem to really understand how the retailers have been protecting themselves and saying, okay, well, if you built a fence around this or you've put a lock key on this piece, well, I'll just go around to the other side door.
So what are the red flags for the retailers themselves? Are there any things that they can, have their radar up for?
Yes, absolutely. So the key things to be looking at are high purchase velocity. And so that means, for example, let's say, for example, like we're talking about a top of the line, gadget that people want to get. It's very normal for there to be higher purchase velocity, more orders related to that ahead of the holidays. So again, the fraudsters kind of know that. And the key to looking at and determining if you have an issue is, are there many types of people with the same names, with the same emails, with the same IPs? You need to take a look at kind of a holistic graph of the types of orders that are coming in and saying, gosh, we didn't used to get so many orders going to Portland, but now the Portland orders are up 10,000%. Portland is a known reshipper hub, for example. So there's all kinds of things like that where you can slice and dice the data, regardless of the type of systems you have, and say, okay, all right, this piece of my business has really dramatically changed. Let's take a look at that. As soon as the fraudsters developed any sense that the retailers were pushing back and blocking their orders, they would kind of up-level the agents on their side that were targeting that site. And they'd start little things like address manipulation. Or they change things like purposely trying to confuse and bypass the security systems that would come in place. So I think one other is stepping back a little bit. The United States has not really faced a kind of brute force, broad-based attack like this, where there are human beings that are trained on what to do in, let's call it a call center, right? That have been organized and trained on, hey, this particular site will allow you to manipulate kind of the delivery address in a way that will confuse its fraud systems and allow the order to go through. Here are the 10 ways that you should try that. Go through this playbook. And just as a customer service agent, might legitimately have a playbook and a flow chart to go through, that has been built by people who know what they're doing and then given to an army of human beings and said, okay, when you encounter this resistance, go to flowchart 2B and execute this playbook. Okay, report back on whether or not that's successful or not. Okay, rinse and repeat. So I think that the key is, as soon as the retailers identify kind of this larger amount of orders with kind of any abnormal elements related to them, followed by chargebacks, you need to raise the kind of the gates up and really start paying more attention to those orders. The fraudsters seem very focused, because they are ultimately selling it to end consumers, on particular products that are selling very well. So we've seen a lot of people who may not have the most sophisticated defenses be somewhat helpful in deflecting this attack by targeting their highest value items. That's the exact dangerous thing to do when you're trying to make sales. So there's obviously a balancing act there, but that's kind of the success that we've seen.
Is it fair to say that one of the weak links in this chain here is the credit card companies themselves? That seems to me that's really the main thing that's being exploited here.
Well, you could say that the financial instrument itself, right, is kind of the root cause. It is a necessary but not sufficient condition, I think. And here's my point on that. If someone has compromised a credit card and all they've compromised is a credit card, the credit card company actually, it's fairly easy to stop that after maybe the first, second attempt, right? So here's what we're finding though. This fraud ring is much more sophisticated, where they don't just have the financial instrument. They know the emails, they know the passwords, they know the addresses. Depending on the order size, they might be using, for example, houses that have recently sold that they know don't have anybody at, where they can open a credit facility and then also confirm that information and then have that house become a place where mules can go to pick up the orders themselves to then get to the end consumer. So the level of sophistication is going much beyond just the payment instrument itself. So I hear you. It's like, gosh, if the payment instrument were more secure, would that help? It would, of course. Yes, I'm not going to say that it's not. But I do believe that there's a lot more going on here. And kind of taking a little bit of a step back, I think disrespecting the fraud ring or their level of sophistication is a big part of the problem, right? And so one thing that I like to do is think of these folks as a business. and a sophisticated business that has very clear COGS and profit margins, and the best fraud ring is going to have the most profit to invest back in. I kind of look at it a little bit more holistically personally, but you're absolutely right, of course. Yes, in many ways, yes, the credit card companies or whatever payment instrument could be offering a more secure payment instrument. With a huge caveat, consumers, especially in America, do not want the friction imposed by a more, quote unquote, more secure payment instrument.
Do we know who's behind this? What part of the world they're coming from?
Absolutely, yeah. So this particular very sophisticated fraud ring is based in Southeast Asia, and I note that I believe, based on the information that we have and that many of our colleagues in the industry have, is that this is kind of a very well coordinated. Unclear yet if it's cell, kind of structure or if it is really more hierarchical, like a corporate structure, but it is very well organized, regardless of the actual pieces. We do know a little bit about the contours. We are exploring ways to stop it at its root, right? From that perspective. And definitely they are based in that Vietnam, or Thailand is kind of our current best, guess.
So what are your recommendations then for folks to best protect themselves against this?
Yeah, so I think that the first thing is chargebacks are a very lagging indicator, right? And so chargebacks from the person who has had their financial instrument stolen and used in this triangulation is going to notice this on their credit card statement, at most same day, but and that sounds fast, right? But because this is a brute force attack, we're talking about literal hundreds of orders being placed within hours, right? That's how you get to these really large numbers. And with same day shipping or, release before holidays and that pressure to get the goods out the door, what we're finding is that, hours is too long. Right. So chargebacks is too late. So I think that there really needs to be either a very excellent team with excellent tools that is, kind of constantly monitoring fluctuations in traffic patterns and kind of sorting like, hey, yes, is this 10,000% increase to Miami a problem or not? Or is that sale just happened to be really, successful? Those types of questions are very hard to answer in real time. So I suggest adopting technology. Machine learning in the space obviously works. Something that can sift through the signal and noise and make sure that you're focusing on the right things, at least if it's not making the decisions for you.
Joe, what do you think?
This ring is getting close to $1 billion in recognized fraud.
Mm-hmm.
Dave, do you think that Signify has found all of the fraud in this?
Highly unlikely.
Highly unlikely. I think these guys may have gotten away with more than $1 billion.
Yeah.
Interesting that it's really not novel techniques. This reminds me very much of the scam that we were talking about in Pakistan with the Amazon opening up services in Pakistan.
Right.
I think this is the same kind of thing. You remember how we were terribly confused by that?
Yeah.
We had a listener write in and tell us about it, and it sounds almost exactly like what Bennett's describing here.
Huh.
Interesting that they're not really novel techniques, right?
Yeah.
They're just using I like that Bennett describes this as a brute force attack.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is. They're just trying things until it works. And I often say, my favorite kind of force is brute force, right? It's remarkably effective, and it shouldn't be as remarkably effective in a lot of things. But here, I don't know how you defend against it without using techniques that Bennett is describing, which is like artificial intelligence and buying a product and helping, or because you're trying to sell things,
mm-hmm.
right? You're trying to make that happen. And as the victim organization here, you would lose out. And if these guys target your organization to find a vulnerability, you could lose big.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Interesting that in the U.S. these guys are going for more fungible things like gold bars and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really fascinating. What makes it okay to do that in the U.S. but not Latin America? Is it because the U.S. has a higher, per capita income? That when someone sends a gold bar to a house in, let's say, Portland, Oregon, which is where he was talking about there being a lot of reshipping around the area, that's less suspicious than somebody in Ecuador ordering one? Maybe. I don't know. I'd like to know why that is the case. I think and that's why it's fascinating, because it poses a question to me.
I wonder if it could be as simple as the proliferation of cash for gold shops all over. It's easy to turn around. It's easy to launder gold.
Yeah, that's a good point, Dave. It might be because we have those cash for gold shops around here, and those things don't exist in other countries.
Yeah.
Same with payday loans. I don't know if payday loans exist in the other country, but other countries, but we have them all over the place here. And they are terrible, terrible organizations. This scam also kind of reminds me of cryptojacking. In cryptojacking, I install some malware on somebody's computer that does all the crypto mining for me, and it costs them money to do that for me. So it's like changing the business model to an all profit business model. Here, they don't make it all profit because they are a large organization and they have to pay people. But they do eliminate the cost of goods sold. Totally eliminate it.
Yeah.
They're essentially fencing stolen goods is what's going on here.
Right.
They attempted over $3 billion, and they take home almost $1 billion in business. So that means they have like a 33% success rate with every one of these orders they place. So when they get a customer order in, they have to try 3 times to get that order fulfilled at no cost other than the time and effort it takes to do it.
And it pays off.
Right. These guys are very adaptive. They have that reshipping operation that he talks about.
Yeah.
That involves a lot of legwork here in the U.S. Right. If this ring is being operated out of Southeast Asia, they still have some operations here in the U.S. And I think those operations are susceptible to law enforcement.
Yeah.
And it would be interesting to have the federal authorities involved in this, find a couple of these people. If you're just a porch pirate and the FBI arrests you, I can imagine that being a very terrifying situation.
It's a bad day.
Right, it's a bad day.
Right.
You're expecting to interact with local law enforcement, and next thing is somebody taking you to an airport and putting you on a plane to fly you to Washington in custody. That would be very intimidating. But I'm not all for the intimidation of by law enforcement. I don't want to say that I'm doing that. But at the same point in time, these guys are running a huge operation that's damaging businesses, particularly in the U.S.
Yeah.
Finally, the last thing I want to say is that chargebacks are slow. By the time you get notification that a chargeback has happened, that order has not only shipped, but it is shipped to the first place that it was going to get shipped to, then picked up by a porch pirate, repackaged, shipped out to the customer. The customer has had it probably for at least 2 weeks before you even see that the chargeback has occurred.
Yeah,
as a fraudulent charge. So it's not a really good indicator. You're going to have to do something more on this.
Yeah,
and that is noticing these trends. Or accept the loss. I don't know. Maybe you accept the risk. I don't think that's a good example, because I think it sounds like once these guys find out that you're vulnerable to this kind of attack, they just keep doing it.
Right. Kill the goose that lays the golden egg.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, our thanks to Bennett for taking the time for us. Again, he is the Chief Customer Officer at Signifyd, and we do appreciate him taking the time for us. We want to thank all of you for listening, and of course, we want to thank our sponsors at KnowBe4. They are experts in helping users do the right thing through new school security awareness training. That is our show. We want to thank all of you for listening. Our thanks to Harbor Labs and the Johns Hopkins University Information Security Institute for their participation. You can learn more at harborlabs.com and isi.jhu.edu. The Hacking Humans podcast is proudly produced in Maryland at the startup studios of Data Tribe, where they're co-building the next generation of cybersecurity teams and technologies. Our senior producer is Jennifer Iben. Our executive editor is Peter Kilpie. I'm Dave Bittner.
And I'm Joe Kerrigan.
Thanks for listening.